Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime. Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Showtime.
Damn it, then let's get to work. Hi, once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome into Best Damn Sports Talk, period. Thanks for joining us, my minions and everybody else along the line. How the hell you been? Hope everybody's got air conditioning, or at least something close to it, man. Time to move where it's cold, for Christ's sake. Jeez, this is getting ridiculous. Nobody can go outside. My dogs don't even want to go outside at this point. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there, and today it's going to be a little bit of East versus West, because it is a pleasure to welcome into the show a gentleman that I have known for about, and I'm trying to think about this, probably a good 25 years from the first time that we met each other. I had the really fortunate ability to live in Denver, Colorado for 4 years and had a great time there. One day I'll be back because that is God's country. There's no doubt about it. And I got to write a couple of articles for a magazine called Mile High Sports Magazine, which was brand new at the time. And it was a couple of guys putting it together, and they were trying, and I wrote some articles for them, and I tried to go back to find two things. One, could I find any of the old magazines? And I still have them somewhere, but I couldn't have them. They're buried. And two, I just wanted to make sure that I got paid for all those articles. But that's it. Let's not even go there. Okay, we'll leave that alone. Let us welcome in the founder, the editor, the man in charge of Mile High Sports Magazine, who will be the discourse du jour today. Doug Ottewill joins us today on Best Damn Sports Talk, period. And, of course, you would have the Mile High Sports Magazine background. Well done, partner. How you been?
Great. It is so great to hear from you. It's man, blast from the past. And I think your recollection is probably pretty good. I'll have to check with accounting to make sure that we don't have any loose ends to tie up, but we'll
I
make
don't
sure
even know,
that
to
done.
be honest with you at this point, I don't even know if I got paid for those articles, if we even agreed on it, because it might have just been that I was doing the articles at the time. I was an anchor at Fox Sports Rocky Mountain, and it might have been just a deal to go ahead, do some articles. We came together and I did a few. They were great fun to do, but now I realize my mistake. I definitely should have charged you, because now you guys are a wild success. I mean, multi-billionaire authors and editors and people out there running the Rocky Mountains, man. I screwed up.
Well, what if we paid you that, whopping $42 or something, and that was the last $42, and it put us over the edge. But as it turns out, not paying was the thing that helped us make it.
Okay, so in other words, what you're trying to do is you're trying to sucker me into believing that I actually helped you live and survive. Okay, Doug, I got to tell you, I like it. The only thing I'm going to do at this point is make a suggestion, and that is we take that $42.50 and we put it towards the cable company that's putting your cable together, because holy shit, partner, I mean, you must be out in the middle of nowhere.
I apologize.
The signal sucks.
Yeah, I know. I'm a technical moron and don't have the best internet out here. But
no, it's not you. I mean, look, it's not. It's never the individual. People who go, I'm not technically savvy. You're not supposed to be.
Good.
You're not supposed to be. Your job is to do sports. You pay for it and you let them do it. But we're going to go ahead and push forward here because, as I always say, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. By the way, before we get started, how's Mile High Sports doing?
It's great. It's in its 21st year, which is something that we quite honestly, never thought we'd see. I mean, when we started out and we were dumb young kids, and everybody said 1 out of 10 makes it, and then the next year 1 out of those 10 make it. And here we are, and it's a strange sports world now, as you know. I mean, back when we started, when you were writing great columns and being a part of our roundtable and our advisory board and all those things, there was newspapers, there was actual sportscast on the 10 o'clock news, and so much of that's changed. I mean, here we are doing a podcast, something that didn't even exist back when we started. So it's been a fun ride for sure.
It has, and now that you kind of are bringing me back a little bit, that's right. It was a year before I left because I left Denver in '03 to go to Boston, and you then you started like late '02,
Yep,
late '01,
exactly.
'02, right around in there, right?
Yep. '02. You're right.
Yep, that was it. I still have, and I'm serious. I'm going to have to now go look for the next time that you or James Marilat come on the show. I'm going to have to find out. I know I have at least three of the original magazines. One of them had Elway on the cover, and it was a greenback cover with Elway. That was probably one of the first editions that you put out. So my only
Yeah.
question then at that point would be, are they worth anything as memorabilia?
They very well might be, especially if they're signed.
No.
The interesting thing about that Elway cover that you talk about is that the reason that we did that was because he was becoming the GM of the Colorado Crush at the time, which was an
Right.
arena football team. It wasn't that he was still with the Broncos or becoming the GM of the Broncos. He was becoming an arena league football GM, and so that is kind of an interesting bit of trivia as to why we were even able to get John Elway on that cover so early.
Yeah, because at that point it was like Elway was untouchable, and right now there are times I think John wants to stay away from the media with everything that's going on out there. Yeesh. But that is another story altogether. Hey, let's go ahead and start and get rolling because I do want to start with the NFL today because there's a lot going on with the NFL that kind of is getting buried a little bit under some of the other sports, and I think we really need to focus on it. I want to start with this, of course. Four more players busted for gambling in the National Football League. One of them, Isaiah Rodgers, actually placed a prop bet on his Indianapolis Colts. So, in essence, he did bet with, against, for, however you want to place it, his team. The point of all this is that is grabbing me is there are those who are covering the story, and they are really just shoveling it off as if it's no big deal. It's really something the NFL shouldn't worry about, fans shouldn't worry about. And my anger, my ire today goes to a reporter, and I am going to use the famous air quotes on this because when you listen to some of the comments, it's enraging to many of us who have covered the NFL for any length of time. Kaylin Kaler is her name. She writes for The Athletic, and she was the author of some of the stories on gambling. And her interview recently on CBS News, talking about the players and talking about it not being a big deal. This is just half of where I want to go today, Doug, to start off. And this simply has me enraged.
The NFL has one of the strictest policies on sports gambling when you look around sports. Actually, just yesterday, the NCAA, which had the strictest policy, they had a zero tolerance policy on sports gambling with players. They amended their policy to make it much more relaxed and the consequences much less severe because they were having a huge issue, just like the NFL was. So the NFL's issue, they are obsessed with maintaining the integrity of the game. So they think that any gambling that's taking place on work premises is unnecessary. And we heard that directly from an NFL executive last week. She asked in a press conference, if integrity is the number one mission, why would we have sports gambling on the premises? So that is kind of the root of their philosophy on this sports gambling policy. But as we've seen, as you mentioned, Jameson Williams and Stanley Berryhill, neither of them were betting on the NFL. Neither of them were threatening the so-called integrity of the game. So you do have to wonder if it's really worth punishing them for 6 games, which is a significant chunk of the season.
The stunning amount of bullshit from Kaylin Kaler on this whole issue is just frightening. Oh, so the NCAA says it's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. They've actually got it right because the NCAA makes billions off gambling, which we will get to from the NFL as well. That's part of the dichotomy here. But the fact that she says they're obsessed with integrity. What the fuck? If you don't have integrity in your game, how do you then move forward without the fans knowing that the players aren't out there screwing around and trying to fix the games? Doug, this is incendiary at this point, how somebody can be so lacklusterly foolish in dealing with this issue of gambling by players.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to Pete Rose and how big of a deal that is and still is to this day, even though sports betting has become wildly illegal, and not just legal, but the biggest problem I have is that it's very much endorsed by pro franchises, teams, leagues, whatever. And hey, I'm okay with that because I understand, especially being in the industry where we are, how much money is pouring into sports because of sports betting. Quite frankly, in the pandemic, sports betting kept lots of media companies alive, but we're media companies. We're here to report and talk and BS and whatever. But if you're a player and you have the ability to change the outcome of a game, not just for the integrity of that game, but I'd take it a step further and say you're changing the integrity of someone else's bet. If we want to talk about why sports betting can really flow in a lot of different directions that's bad, if you're betting on something, whether it's good or bad to happen, not only are you messing with your own game, but you're telling all the sports bettors out there, you actually didn't have control of this bet. No one does. But to find out later, you're going to lose because I wanted to win mine. And that's a scary thing too. And
well, but what you're talking about here, this inclusion of these tart reporters out there who don't know shit from shinola about what actually goes on in the game, and they pick up a couple of ideas from players who are giving them things anonymously. What you're saying is correct. That is the point. Because if you have players on the inside who are altering the game in any way, shape, form whatsoever, and Isaiah Rodgers placed a prop bet on one of the running stats for the Indianapolis Colts, he placed the bet. How do we know that he wasn't part of telling other players to get involved in the bet? That he didn't alter his play? That somebody else didn't alter the play? The fact that we've got morons and idiots out there who claim to know the game and know the sport, who are saying it's no big deal, the integrity's not a big deal at all, is frightening. Not just, and I think your point's well taken, not just to the individual fan, but to the gambler themselves. You're changing things from the inside.
Yeah, and I think, guys like you and I are sports purists. I would like to think that every game ever played is being played by two opponents, both of who want to win for all the right reasons. They have nothing other than the goal of winning. I want to
which we know is bullshit.
Is not true. And I think, especially if you've been in this industry for long enough, you understand that there's a lot of things in play in especially professional sports and college sports, as you mentioned earlier. I want to believe that. But I think if you start taking additional steps, and the fact that, the NFL wasn't in Las Vegas for so long because it was too close to the Strip, and now they are. And now, I just used the Denver Broncos as an example. I think I know there are multiple betting sponsors tied to the Denver Broncos. They've got this app lounge and this book common area, and they've got a sponsorship with one of the casinos in Blackhawk that's tied to the Broncos and a betting company. And I'm not picking on the Broncos or those companies. I just think that there is a lot of blurred lines here. And I think if I am trying to defend the players, which I'm not, my argument, if I was a player, was, hey, wait a minute, you guys are making billions on this industry. Why is it a problem that I participate in it? And I'm not defending them in that stance, but I think that would be my retort if I was a player and I was losing revenue from 6 games or half a season or whatever the case might be. My argument would be, look, you guys are the ones that are bringing this into our living room, not me.
Okay, let's stop there. You bring up a good point to move forward here, because while I'm excoriating a reporter for basically saying some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life when it comes down to this subject, completely ill-educated, we do have to also say on this side that the NFL are the ones who got in bed with the gamblers, in bed with the casinos. They're the ones who've done it. They're the ones making millions and billions of dollars on gambling. It's not going to go away. So it does bring up that point that if you're the NFL, you're in bed with the enemy. And you and I, both as guys who've been doing this for a long time, there were times on sports talk radio, I couldn't even mention the word odds or over-under. Right. It was program director said, do not talk gambling. But now, of course, everybody does because, hell, most places are sponsored by gamblers and casinos and places like that. But the NFL's in bed. They're going to make their millions. The gamblers are going to make their billions along with this as well. So they're in a real bind here. I mean, they've decided that they have to punish players, yet you basically let the wolf into the chicken coop here. And how can you then settle it and separate it? And I think it's possible, Doug, but that's why leagues like the NFL have to be a lot more cognizant of what goes on with their players and their coaches and their front office people. You've now got to make sure that you are as squeaky clean as possible, because the first instance, here we go, guys busted for gambling, and Isaiah Rodgers on the property, gambling on the Colts. Immediately, when it comes down to the regular fan, your credibility goes right out the window. But let me back up, and I'll give you a chance on this, and also consider this. Do the fans give a shit? I mean, really, think about it. Do the gamblers care? Does the regular fan care? The average fan? Do they care that the NFL is in bed with casinos and gamblers? I sometimes think the answer there is no.
Well, in my general experience, I would 100% agree. I think fans don't care, because fans, especially in the states where betting has now become legal, that's a big part of their weekend or week or hour. I mean,
their lives.
It's a big part of sports now. So I tend to think, and I'm going to generalize here, but the average fan probably agrees more with the report that you just showed by saying, hey, look, what's the big deal? Like, these teams are making billions. They're already in bed. Like, it's very hypocritical of them to punish their players. I do think that fans, they want to believe that the game is being played properly. So there is that consideration of, oh, well, wait a minute. What if that messed up the score of the game? Or what if that took the over under and
what if it
made
changed
it over instead
and we now have, look, that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest reason why we go back. And again, here we're talking real ancient history, the 1919 Black Sox scandal, where it was, these are players who got together and decided they were going to change the game in order to make money. And they did, which is why it then started a lot of the punishment, the banishments, the Shoeless Joe Jackson issue goes on and on. Granted, that's over 100 years ago. But we're still at that point, Doug. If you're going to take gambling in and you're going to be partners with them, then in my mind, you got to tighten the screws as hard as possible on every single player. And I'll get to the players again in a moment here, but you can't stop the train. So you've got to be able to figure it out and make people understand that you're not a place where basically the game can be changed on the field because somebody's got a push bet.
I think the biggest problem and the biggest challenge that the NFL has is that they can be as harsh as they want to be. And I think in reality, that's the only way that you're going to curb this long term, is that guys have to fear for their life that if they make one single bet, they're done, or that they will miss not maybe 6 games, but a season. I think it's got to be so harsh that guys don't eat. I mean, what bet can you make as a player that could cover that much loss of salary? You have to make it to where it's a no-brainer not to do it. The trouble is, though, and what I kind of started to allude to, is that it's really easy to not track anything back to you. I mean, everybody has a cousin with a phone. Everybody has 5 friends with a phone. So if you want to go out and make a $25,000 prop bet on you, I mean, have a bunch of random people that you know do it on their bets, Venmo them later. I mean,
well, yeah,
should
but
it be tracked by the likes?
But what you're opening up is the next door here. What you're opening up is sort of like the next door here, because this comes to the second part of the rant on this. There are no stupider players in the history of professional sport than these idiot knuckleheads in the NFL who are busted because they are placing the bets. Give it to
Yeah,
a friend of yours. Here's my phone. Go place my bets. Go do it from home 25 miles away. These guys are doing it on the premises when they're told not to. And now it becomes the excuse factor. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know the NFL's not doing a good job telling me of what goes on here. Bullshit.
Oh, right.
The NFL goes to huge lengths, as does every sport, in educating these knuckleheads about what to do and what not to do. They just don't care. It's just floating right by them. I don't care. Come on, you guys. This is not going to be a big deal because they all think they can get away with it. End of story.
I mean, it's like the old Major League Baseball locker room. I mean, in every single locker room, there is a sign that says no betting. I know
On the door.
that you can't miss that if you're a Major League Baseball player. I'm positive, based on what the NFL, you and I have been around the NFL for a long time. They have umpteen seminars every offseason, every season. They've got experts that come in to talk about new rules. They've got referees that come in to monitor camp. They do not miss the message. I mean, there's no way. And if
They've got experts who come into NFL locker rooms and teach the players how to take a shit in public. I mean, come on. They teach them about their attitudes, what to do, how to deal with the press. Media training has gone on and on for years because the NFL has got a multi-billion-dollar organization here that they have to protect. And that's what they do. Let me then bring this down to the second bit from our Mensa candidate here, this reporter from The Athletic, Kaylin Kaler, who I don't think will ever be a guest on this show after this, and frankly, I'm okay with that. But here's the second part of this, where they talk about the players who are getting a pass. Now, this is even more laughable, where you listen to Kaler and the host of the CBS show basically go, oh, there's nothing wrong with them gambling. It's fine. Gambling's perfect. Oh, these guys need to get a break. Listen to this.
These are athletes. They're passionate about sports. It wouldn't be surprised if they would bet on another sport. What sort of response did you get from players about their habits and the policy?
Yeah, so when I asked players, I talked to 5 different players, gave them anonymity so they could be totally honest about what they did or didn't know about the policy and what their gambling habits were. And 4 out of the 5 of them did not know the details of the policy. They all knew, okay, we can't bet on the NFL. That's an obvious part of the policy, but they didn't know the parts about not gambling while you're at work, not gambling in the locker room at the team hotel while you're traveling. They didn't know that part of it. And the reality is that this new generation of players, the 22, 23-year-olds, these are the ones that are getting punished. Both Jameson and Stanley were rookies last season. They grew up in a world where these apps are readily available. They grew up in an NFL where the NFL has been partnered with sports gambling entities their entire career.
Right.
So this is so available and visible to them, and it's just part of their lives. Their friends are doing it. So I think that they weren't educated very well. And what I heard from the players, since they didn't know the details of the policy, is that they weren't really emphasizing this in previous years. Now the NFL is. They're going, team to team to make sure that players and staffers know this policy. But I think in the past, from what I heard from players, they did not feel like they really were emphasizing this policy. And it's easy for them when you sit down in a meeting with, 3 hours of rules and compliance issues to sort of tune out the details.
Where do you want to start? I mean, Doug, I tell you what, I got a list here, but I'm going to let you go first.
Where I agree with her is that she is correct in that these guys grew up in this environment. But when I say grew up, we're talking about 3 years. 3 years is about all that, and it's really not even, it's more like 2.5 that gambling has been legalized in terms of apps and in states outside of Las Vegas. So I think I agree with her, but it's only been 2.5 years. So if you're a rookie, yeah, you probably got to see that when you're in college. But also when you're a rookie in the NFL, and again, you and I know this, there's been a thing forever called Rookie Symposium, where teams sit all the rookies down and they go through every possible bad scenario that a professional athlete can get themselves into and try to teach them how to get out of it. And
wait a minute, hear what you just said there, and you're right. Teach them how to get out of it. not necessarily teach them how to avoid it, but how to get out of it. And you are exactly right. The NFL and all these sports will do the same thing. They'll say, this is how you avoid it. But if you get in trouble, here's how you can get out of it. And the first step is always call the team, make sure that we know. And we all know that rote that goes in there. But that's really fascinating the way you said that. And that's very true.
And I think that, you know, we joke about what guys are getting suspended for. But at the end of the day, if you make this mistake, you had to really try to make the mistake, in my opinion. I don't think that you either listened so little to what the team and the, you know, counselors, whatever you want to call them, is telling them, or you blatantly disagreed with the rule.
Or you blatantly break the rule.
Right. You should get 6 games for breaking the rule and 18 for being stupid. And that's, to me, or being a criminal. I mean, you talk about the Shoeless Joe Jackson. Those guys knew. I mean, you know, the movies 8 Men Out and, you know, all the great stories about that Black Sox team. They knew there was a moral dilemma involved. They were doing it for reasons that had more to do with they didn't make the kind of money that professional athletes make these days. They were trying to stick it to ownership, all those things. That is not what's happening in today's NFL. It's guys doing it because they're being completely reckless.
Well,
and
here's part of all this, and this is sort of where I land on this. You're right, and she's right in that the players are now used to this. But again, it's only been a few years. It's not as if they've grown up with this from the time they were 3 years old. Mentally 3 years old, perhaps, but certainly not chronologically in their physical sense. But the whole idea that, oh, their friends are doing it, so that's why they're doing it. Or the fact that, oh, wait a minute, but it's not that big a deal to them and they're sort of used to it. This namby-pamby, hands-off, whiner, weasel, wankerish shit that's going on here is nonsense. Be honest here, Kaylin. Do your job. The fact of it here is that these players don't care. They're either ignorant or stupid. One of the two of them, you got to put it in there, because it's right there for them to know. So if they don't know it, that's their fault. The league can't be held responsible for it if you just nod off in the middle of a meeting somewhere, because that's your responsibility. That's why you're getting paid a spitload of money, is to be able to do this and understand the rules of the game. And listening to the excuses are just laughingly, hysterically foolish to listen to the point where, Doug, I'll tell you, I'm at it. I hate to say this. No, I don't. I really like to say this. I'm a hardline guy because I've been doing this a long time.
I know you are.
You bet. See, there you go. I like that. Bust those balls. Go for it. You break the rules, especially in gambling, you're out. That's it. You're out. What do you mean? You're out of the NFL. You mean forever? Yes. Goodbye. Have a nice day. Thanks for shopping. And I'll tell you what, there's a convenience store right down the street that's got an opening. You can go ahead and start filling out the application now. I mean, you've got a clean house of these people, because if you really, here's another thing, Doug, if you really think that these guys, these knuckleheads like Rodgers, are going to come back and are never going to gamble again, then you're the stupid one this time. But we all know the reality of this is that the players' union will get involved and they will protect their players. But I think there's got to be a much harsher punishment than just half a season off or a season out. You got to bust these guys and blow them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, they have to fear for their lives, or else they will not necessarily. I mean, look, these guys don't have as much of a sense of reality. For you and I, if we missed 6 game checks, we would be in a fetal position for 6 weeks. We couldn't even fathom the risk involved of losing that kind of money just so you can have a little action on a game. It's stupid. We get that because we've worked our whole lives. These guys might not, but hey, sorry, you need to understand that right away and they need to see an example of it if they're ever going to be truly cured of this. But I don't know if you have another 5 or 6 hours of my poor internet connection, but we could talk about how across the
We can break them into segments, buddy.
the entire society, this is the mindset. Nothing is ever anyone's fault. Nothing is. You can be told 100 times, but you know what? They didn't tell me the 101st, so therefore I need some grace. I think this is a much bigger problem, systemic, societal, whatever you want to call it, than it is just in the NFL. NFL has as many knuckleheads as every other day walk of life. And it's too simple to say, oh, that's the millennials now, which really makes me sound old. It's not that. It's that this is accepted in every single walk of life, that you don't have accountability. Everybody needs time off. If anything is hard, it's not hard. It's mental health. You can get me going for hours and hours and hours about how soft and how irresponsible and how unaccountable everyone is these days, which these days is a very dangerous term to say, but it's true. And it trickles right into professional sports, especially when you turn around and you're giving a 21-year-old kid multiple millions of dollars. And that kid has never been told no his whole life. So he needs to be told once, and that would scare him. That would scare them.
And we have seen this. We have seen this. You and I and this generation have seen this dating back to the 80s, where high school players began the coddling and began being allowed to get away with academics and being allowed to skate and going to special schools and getting special treatment. But it has happened to the point where those are the parents. Those are the fathers and the mothers, specifically, who were given the break. So now they're going to teach their kids to get the break, which is what they're doing. And you're right. I would like one time, Doug, to hear an Isaiah Rodgers or any of these players that you got busted for gambling, and here's the evidence. Get in front of a camera, do it on your social media page. Do it on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want, Facebook for the old farts, and look into the camera and say, I was wrong. I screwed up. Yeah, I did that. I bet on the Colts and I was in the Colts facility. I placed a bet while I was at my workplace. The team told me not to do it. I screwed up, and I promise I'm not going to do it again. Now, we may walk into the John Morant type of player at this point who will say over and over and over again that I'm sorry, but at least let's get that. Teach them the responsibility to say, I screwed up and I'm going to try again. I have a tremendous amount of respect if you do that, and I'm going to say, okay, guess what? You're going to get 6 games. You're out. But we're going to let you come back in. The fact you sit there and stonewall me, don't want you in my league. Don't want you on my team.
Right. Yeah. To blame the league in any way, shape, or form, whether you like the fact that they're taking money or that they're in bed with the betting companies, is somewhat irrelevant. It's a rule. You don't have to like the companies you're associated with, but you have to play by the rules of the game. And I think that's where, there's just so many, especially athletes. And you talked about the parents of guys that got away with, you get an F on the test, that's okay. We'll make it right. You still play Friday night. I mean, it's not a new thing. This has been going on a long, long time, but I think it's become so rampant that there is hardly a line at all, much less a blurred one.
The next thing is we're going to have to wait for the kids in Pee Wee football to go ahead and start laying side bets on the sideline during the game by going, hey, I'll bet you $5 that I can stop you in the next series. That will probably happen. Moving on, let's bring it closer to Colorado right now. Deion Sanders, head coach at the University of Colorado, and I love my time out there covering the Buffs. It's a great atmosphere out there. David Platty, our good friend, who was the SID out there for many years, introduced me to it and got me involved in it. Love it. Deion Sanders comes in as the head coach, and now there's a discussion from some sources, some sides, if you will, that other teams around college football need to be worried about Deion Sanders and worried about what he's going to do. But I want to start off with this, and this comes from what is now the defunct morning show on ESPN, the voice of Max Kellerman, where Max goes through a tweet that he found talking about the tremendous amount of money that Colorado is going to make and is already making the moment they brought Deion Sanders on as their head coach.
I can't verify these numbers, but I saw a very interesting tweet from Boyce Watkins, PhD. Wealth is power. This is at Dr. Boyce Watkins 1 is the Twitter account, is the handle. 5 reasons why Deion Sanders is getting robbed by the University of Colorado. Now think about that. What? Deion Sanders makes $5 million a year? Okay. Number 1, the economic value of the university's horrific corporate brand, according to Dr. Watkins, easily rose by $500 million once Deion made them one of the hottest brands in college football. 2, Colorado sold out their entire season for the first time in 27 years. That's worth millions. 3, student body enrollment, merchandise sales, concessions, and parking will add millions to the school's annual revenue. Annual revenue is what I was trying to say. Number 4, University of Colorado's annual budget, this is the least convincing to me, is $2.14 billion, which means they can pay Deion's entire annual salary with just a day's spending. And 5, Colorado's ticket prices shot through the roof. The cheapest tickets that Boyce Watkins could find were between $415 and $1,200 each. Nobody wanted these tickets last year. Deion isn't just a great coach. He's a $500 million brand. So this wasn't a hire. This was a corporate acquisition. If I could buy a business that cost me just $5 million a year to operate and earn an extra $80 to $100 million a year, it'd be a no-brainer.
Now, we can't verify the numbers. It came from a tweet, and Kellerman made that very clear. But I think he's probably right on the money here, the amount of money that Colorado will make. The issue, though, here, Doug, is Deion Sanders is getting paid $5 million a year. He is an unproven head coach at that level of college football. Please, do not tell me for a second that what he did at Jackson State was worthy of and also equatable to what is now really high-end college football. Different athletes, different games, different opposition, different teams. Not saying that he didn't do a great job there, but you can't equate that. $5 million, he's not being underpaid because he hasn't done anything yet to prove what he can do. So for people to say that you got to be scared of Deion Sanders at this point and that he's underpaid, first of all, prove it, and then I'll be worried, and then you make your money. But, Doug, the overhype that's going on right now about Deion Sanders is really hysterical.
It does scare me a little bit because, you know, I grew up here. I watched the 1990 Buffs win a national championship. I've seen how bad it's been in the last 20 years, really. There's been blips of good football, but not that many. So I am as excited as anybody to see what Deion Sanders can do. I am a little bit clinched, worrying what's going to happen once the season starts because it is very unproven. So I think when you look at Deion Sanders, there are 2 ways to look at him. One is the wins and loss, the X's and O's, all those things. And I agree with you. What he did at Jackson State is it's impressive, no doubt. I'm not taking anything away from him, but it's not equal to what Nick Saban does. It's not the same thing.
No, it's not.
And if he does, I will be so happy to say, yeah, those 2 things can equate. I hope he does. The other way to look at him, though, is what, you know, kind of that entire tweet was about is the money behind him. There's sort of the wins and the X's and O's side of Deion, and then there's the business of Deion. And as a Buffs fan, a Buffs follower, I cannot believe how great it is to have this kind of ambassador. And I won't even use the word coach, ambassador of this brand. And he's worth every penny in that aspect because I have sat through 10 years where CU football is completely irrelevant. We can't sell an ad around CU sports coverage. We can't get people hyped about our college football issue. I'll tell you, I can't verify all the numbers that were just reported, but I can give you a real life for me in my living room kind of example. Forever, for the history of the magazine, dating back to when you were writing for us, we always had a deal with CU, always had an ad deal with them. And it basically consisted of promoting the program, trying to sell tickets to football and basketball, all the things that colleges do. forever, they paid us a percentage of cash, not a ton, and then we'd get football and basketball tickets. And for years, the only thing that deal was worth was the cash. And it wasn't much. But we had the tickets. Every once in a while, you got a friend that wants to go. It's nice to be able to give it to them, whatever. This year, they called and said, we can't do the cash. We'll do the tickets still, though. And we got less tickets because they're worth more in terms of what you're able to sell them for. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the cash that we used to take in versus the tickets we got this year, the cash is worth maybe 5%. We could make so much more money if all we did was take those tickets and put them on StubHub and sell them. That's how much Deion Sanders is worth to me, because I can take that money that I used to get, give it away, don't even take it, and take the tickets instead, and literally do, I mean, I don't know what the factor would be, probably 50 times better monetarily.
Well, see, and that's sort of the point here to the overhype side of things. Yes, you're right. The Deion Sanders brand is going to bring attention to Colorado, and it has the possibility of bringing in a much higher player that's going to want to play for Deion, that's going to want to be part of this program, and taking a program that has always been sort of mid and low range, quite frankly, for a long time, and elevate it up into the upper echelon of winning college football teams. It has that possibility to do it. My point is, he hasn't done anything yet. He's saying all the right things, but coaching at Jackson State and coaching at CU are two entirely different things. You got to prove it. You got to put it on the line and show me what you got. And I think we might be on the same path here, where I think because it's Deion and because CU is so desperate to get some sort of attention, they'll give him 3 years. They'll give him a full 3 years to go ahead and do something. A lot of coaches, it would take 2 years. But because it's only $5 million and it's Deion, they'll give him 3, maybe 4, do you think? And then, they'll up his salary if he really does well. But they're so desperate at CU to get a winner here and to bring some relevancy back to this program that they'll let this thing stretch a little farther than they would with anybody else, based on reputation.
Oh, for sure. It's funny that you put it in those terms, because out here, the terms are, oh man, I hope CU can keep him for 4 years. I hope that he doesn't go anywhere, because the expectation is so high that he's going to win. And I think that a guy like Deion, if he comes into a program that's in the Pac-12, which is down, and that's to his advantage, I think if he does well in his first couple of years, I do think bigger programs will come calling. But well doesn't mean you win a national title. Well means, the CU doesn't even go to bowl games. So I think that's a step right there. Get to a bowl game. As much as the bowl games are an open invitation for anyone who's anybody in college football these days, just getting to a bowl game would mean something to this program.
Now, okay, but you brought up a good point. Let's dig into that a little bit. The fact that Deion Sanders is coming into the program right now, bringing with him all this cachet and all the name, and the fact that he could indeed not be a long-timer there, is there a prevailing thought of any way that Deion is using CU as nothing more than a stepping stone for himself to prove that he can coach at that level and then move right on to a bigger program and leave CU in the dust the first chance he gets?
I think that thought exists, certainly, because look, this is what happens with Colorado schools. I mean, it happens at CSU about every 2 years. It happens at CU with Mel Tucker. I mean, Mel Tucker was the only coach that looked to me to have this program really on the rise. And we call him Midnight Mel Tucker because he literally came on a show, talked about how great everything is, and the next day he was gone to Michigan State. So, of course, people think that. Do
you think even CU knows it, that if you were to delve into the boardrooms at CU right now, the athletic department, that they say to themselves, guys, we know that this is temporary and he's using us, but we really don't give a shit, because if it makes us money and sells out the program and gets us a lot of people to pay attention to us, we then are going to make a whole lot more money in the process. So let's let him use us.
Yeah, I mean, I think for all intents and purposes, CU has already won. They've already won this. This scenario has played out. I'll give you a good example. And I think you probably remember him. Vic Lombardi, longtime sportscaster in Denver. Been around, grew up here, was on CBS forever, now is on Altitude with the Nuggets. He said when the rumors were starting to fly about Deion Sanders coming to Colorado, he said, I will walk from our studio to my house if this comes true. And he lives in Golden. And I know you remember how far Golden is from downtown Denver.
A long time.
Well,
long way.
He had to walk. It's almost unfathomable to me still to think that this guy, this brand came here, because I don't know why he would. Well, I'll take that back.
Because it's easy.
When you walk,
because it's easy. He can't lose. I mean, if he turns up to be an over 500 coach, he can blame it on somebody else, and he can still get the Deion brand rolling, and he can move on someplace else. Because even if Deion Sanders' opinion goes 500 or just barely over 500, which he won't, I think he'll get some good players. But I think if that happens, it won't hurt the Deion brand whatsoever. He'll be able to go to the next employer and say, I did it in Division I. I got there. Now I got the seasoning here. Now pay me more money. I don't see a losing scenario here for Sanders under any circumstance.
No, I really don't either. The one thing I'll say about it's funny because people we're so used to just calling him Coach Prime now. This is what's said all over the place. One thing I will say is that guy is either the most competitive, sincere, driven individual that I've really ever witnessed in terms of a coach, or he's the greatest salesman that's ever walked since Bill McCartney. And that, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but people out here are buying into the notion that he wants to set up something permanent. He wants to leave his mark. Do I 100% believe that? If Florida comes calling and they say, hey, $5 million, that's a pretty nice living for anybody. How about 15? How about you
20,
get into that? Yeah, how about you get into that Nick Saban category? Deion Sanders is no dummy. I mean, Deion Sanders is loaded because he's been a promotional machine his entire life. So if that opportunity comes, then he probably will take it. And I really can't blame him. And I also can't blame CU for saying, well, we can't afford to pay him. However, if he has a long enough stretch, they might be able to afford to pay him. It's sort of the old, why does Nick Saban make that much money? Because he's worth it.
Well, look, and here it is. We're doing this show on June 30th. We're not in college football season yet. It's the doldrums of summer for baseball. You and I are sitting here talking about CU football. I mean,
which we haven't done. We have not done that for 15 years at least.
There's never been a reason to talk. Look, I still got friends out there, and I know that they'll be upset with us, but there's been no reason to talk about Buffs football. It really hasn't.
Zero.
And there's been less in the last few years. So you got people talking about you, which, again, comes back to how we started this segment. The amount of money that Deion Sanders is making this program right now means maybe he is being underpaid at $5 million a year, but the hype doesn't match the output yet because there is no output yet. Moving on, I want to get one last thing in here before we get out of here. I want to talk a little baseball, and I want to get your take on this too, because I have never been to a perfect game. Most people haven't. I've been to a couple of no-hitters in the past before, but the absolute thrill of 27 batters up, 27 batters down is an incredible achievement at any level on any team to be able to do. It speaks not only to the pitcher, but to the defense, to the catcher, to the people behind him who are there as a team. Domingo Germán throws the no-hitter. Domingo Germán throws the perfect game for the New York Yankees. And it did not take long for people like Matt Snyder on CBS Sports to immediately say, it's nice, but it was the Oakland A's.
He had the two brushes with the sticky stuff earlier in the year, so people were starting to say, hey, he can't pitch without the sticky stuff. And he went out and he faced a relatively punchless A's team, got the job done. But, here's the thing. throughout baseball history, we've seen that pitchers who sometimes aren't the most elite pitchers in baseball can go out and have a game like this. I was just thinking earlier, it's been a long time since we saw a perfect game. We haven't seen it since 2012, but we saw 3 that season. One of those was Phil Humber. Most people don't know who Phil Humber is, but he threw a perfect game in Seattle that year. Sometimes you just have it, and everything's working. We saw it tonight with Germán. He was getting ahead of every single hitter. You know, when it's 0-1, 0-2 to every single hitter, you're in complete control. And then it starts to snowball where you could tell he had the swagger going in the last 3 innings there, where you could tell he just wanted the ball to get back to him as soon as possible, go out and get the next out. And, you know, the Yankees played really good defense. It helps that the A's are not a very good offensive team. That certainly helps. But sometimes it's just one of those things that happens. We've seen it throughout baseball history. As I said, we were due for one of these since it had been since 2012. And again, sometimes it just happens.
I got to tell you, Doug, I love it when people who have never reached a level of a major league sport such as baseball, save for maybe playing it on Xbox at a high level, are the first ones to get out there and say that, well, you know what the problem is here? He really hasn't faced anybody. He really hasn't faced a really good team. He faced the Oakland A's, which really aren't a very good team. Come on. Can't we just give the guy some credit here, first of all, for what he's done? This is brilliance to be able to do this and for the team to do it. Yet the denigration begins. And the other side of this, and answer this as well for me, please. Within hours of Germán throwing the perfect game, social media was lighting up from some people who are going, now, don't you forget that he had a domestic abuse suspension back in 2019. This is a bad guy who likes to beat up women, who likes to break the law. I'm thinking to myself, you know, stop. If we started to look at the backgrounds, the legalese of every single major league player in every sport who's done something magnificent, and we started to look at their peccadillos, and I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to denigrate and downgrade what he did. It's heinous. You don't put your hands on anybody else. You don't do that, period. But he did it. He was punished. And if we started to dig into every player, Doug, about all the shit that's gone wrong in their lives, I mean, we'd spend nothing more than hours on a talk show doing it. Let it breathe. Stop bringing up the nonsense here and give us the magnificent attitude of what went on here. Or let's just start tearing into everybody and making sure that every time they do something brilliant, we talk about the past and what's happened with them. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, and I think that is what Twitter has done to sports, is that everybody that has the most unique take gets the most attention, good or bad. So no matter what happens, people are out there with every possible take there is. And a lot of times that's negative. I mean, to your point, go back to the greatest of all time, the very beginning of all beginnings of Babe Ruth. You think Babe Ruth was an angel? I mean, he's one of the most famous, womanizers and saloon crashers there ever was.
Yeah, but wait a minute. But let's sort of make the difference here. Babe Ruth was a hard drinker. He was a hard eater. Who knows what he did in his personal life? There's not a lot about that. But there is no domestic assault. There is no sexual assault. There is no drug breaking of laws at that point. Because, again, we didn't know a lot of what happened that time. There wasn't social media. So let's be fair. We do have to separate that. While Babe Ruth was no angel, domestic assault, sexual assault, assault of this level is a heinous crime that has to be at least noted in the overall scheme of things. Yes?
By no means am I saying the same thing. I guess my point would be we are naive to think that everybody that we don't know everything about lived a perfect life. Everything that nowadays, you do know everything about everybody if they're in the spotlight. So I think it's almost an unfair environment to say, not unfair. You do what you do and you face the consequences. But I would say that it's unfair to go back and punish someone twice once they've been punished for something that they are guilty of.
That they've been punished for.
Right. They quote unquote serve the time. But to bring it all back to baseball, how many? And I think the term used in the clip there was relatively punchless. How many relatively punchless lineups have there been in the history of baseball? Not just since 2012, but forever. And I mean, the fact that there's been fewer perfect games recently, I mean, like you said, 2012, to me, that speaks to how hard it is, because I would make the argument that back in the day when all you had to do was win the pennant to go to the World Series and there was only a handful of teams, all those teams were loaded. It was really hard to throw a perfect game back then. Now you do have the Oakland A's, you do have the Colorado Rockies, you do have, name the team that's been horrible in the last dozen years. I mean, it happens all the time. There's a lot of teams that not everybody can have a loaded lineup. There's a lot of Sunday lineups where all the starters take games off, and it still doesn't happen. I mean, this is an incredible accomplishment. I would make the argument that you take the best pitcher in baseball, and he would have a hard time throwing a perfect game against a good college team. And I think that's not to say that, but a hitter's a hitter. These guys, even with the A's, they're very,
professional
very
baseball players, my friend. That's really what it is. It's luck of the draw. It's the way things happen. It's the way things break. And look, we're in a baseball season now where we have the pitch clock. So it's not like the pitcher actually gets a tremendous amount of advantage over the hitters anymore, where they can sit back, relax, wait, make them wait. You got to deliver that baseball. You got to be right in the bucket, and you got to make them work for it. So
yeah, I think
to me, it's just a foolish. It's just a foolish thing to say that he faced a lineup that wasn't that good. You get in there and you go ahead and try and pitch to these guys, and you try and hit against them. You can't do it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to look at, and something that maybe we'll see, maybe we won't. But with the sped up pitch clock, I do wonder if guys get in the rhythm and they go. There's nothing a batter can do to slow down a pitcher's rhythm. I wonder if that will have a positive impact going forward. I don't know, but I'll tell you the one thing. I love watching baseball infinitely more right now because it is so much more of an efficient game. It's what people got to watch in the 50s.
Do you agree with something? Before we get out of here, we had this discussion earlier in the week with friends of mine, Mike Petraglia from Cincinnati and Luis Cornetta from ESPN. We talked about baseball. My assertion is that Major League Baseball has got to learn its pecking order place right now. That because of all the mistakes they have made over the years, the idiocy, the nonsense, the bad management, the bad roles at the commissioner's side, the greed from the owners, that they've got to understand. Baseball is now, in my opinion, the third most popular sport in America, maybe fourth. And if you start taking attendance and figures from NFL, the rising attendance of MLS, NBA as well, and the National Hockey League didn't do bad this season, not that they're overtaking baseball yet. But if you do all that, you can make the case that baseball is third or maybe fourth most popular sport in America right now. They're never going to be number one again.
I would agree with that. It's too slow of a game. Traditionalist, and I would put myself as that. I love baseball. I love the history of baseball. I like going and hanging out with my dad for 9 innings on a nice day. But your average sports fan has the attention span of a squirrel. I mean, and all the way back to the beginning. True. If you can't put a bet down or send a tweet out or do 10 things in the course of a one television timeout, you're losing that audience. And I think that really it's sad because that is what's happening to baseball. I just don't think people have the attention or the time for it. Guys like you and I still do. We still love the game, but I do think that they really do have to understand that they got to figure out a way to communicate to those people that don't have the time or attention span to consume their product. And I really think that there's a lot of those people out there, and there are more and more of them coming.
I got to admit, I guess I'm part of the squirrel generation then, the way it's gone on, because my favorite sport is hockey, and I will sit there and watch the Bruins, except I did turn them off a couple times this year when they got hammered because I just couldn't stand it anymore. I was ready to throw things around the house. And the lady Shannon said, "Will you just calm down? Everything's fine." And she was right. But I'm the same way. I got, I'm sitting back and I got this, and let's say, okay, and there's a commercial break. Okay, let's see, let's check this. Let's go. Let's look at the scores. Let's look at Facebook. Let's look at Twitter. Oh, we're back. Okay. Oh, wait, let me go back here again. We're the squirrel generation. We can't sit and watch the games anymore. Hey, I want to, the advertisers, you're not making any money with me because I'm gone, like most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. We're going to see. There's what I have friends of mine from a company called Chowder Heads in Massachusetts, and they do brilliant T-shirts and hats and things. They've actually got a great one. Hold on. I've never done this before, but I got to share this. I got to share this real quick. They sent me this just the other day, and this is the kind of stuff they do.
Nice. Yeah, I have a dog that would love that shirt.
I mean, that to me, with the 4th of July up here right now, people, is my mantra at this. But they put this together and sent this to me. I got to talk to my friends at Chowder Heads, and that's Chowder Heads with a Z, by the way, and ask them. I said, maybe you guys want to do a T-shirt that's about the squirrel generation. I think you might have hit on something here, Doug. I really do. I think you might have nailed that. Listen,
get those royalties for you.
This is, and by the way, people, don't shoot off fireworks the 4th of July. Animals don't like it. Dogs don't like it. They're hearing it's terrible. And if you have veterans and people who suffer from PTSD in your neighborhood, and you have fireworks going off in the area, I have a friend of mine who's a military veteran who every year at 4th of July, Memorial Day, and any other time that there's fireworks, he has to go into a closet in his house that he has made specifically, and he has it lined with all sorts of quilts and pillows. He says, I got to get in there. I can't do it. I lose everything. I start throwing up because it's all the explosions that are going on around him, and that's part of his PTSD. So I just tell people, please don't do it. And
be courteous. Be courteous.
Go watch Macy's. Anyway, real quick, what's happening with Mile High? Go ahead and absolutely give us the plug on everything, because you've got so much going on Mile High Sports. I mean, it's not just articles.
We're squirrels ourselves. I think, and as you might imagine, the magazine has evolved to so much more. I mean, really now we're a sports content company. So, if the bulk of our work is really at milehighsports.com. We've got great beat writers. We've got guys out there doing the work with the Broncos and the Nuggets and the Rockies, if you want to read about the Rockies. But then, everything. It's social media. It's the Instagram channels and the Twitter channels. And I think I would say that I don't take much credit for that. We got a bunch of really young guys who understand modern sports. I still love the games. I still love to write and talk about things. But these guys are hitting the streets every day trying to make sure that, the modern sports fan is getting what they want, how they want, where they want it. So Mile High Sports is it's fun. There's a lot of energy around it. The guys that are working with us now are no longer old legends like myself. It's a fun place to be.
It always has been, and even though I haven't been back in a lot of years, I'm always checking in on the website. I'm always finding out what you're doing. I go to you before I go to the Denver Post.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Which my friends at the Post will go, you shit, how dare you? But it's I go there and it's fine. Anyway, reminder once again, it is milehighsports.com. Go there. The content there is brilliant, and it is devoted to the Rockies, the Rocky Mountains, the West. And if you want to know sports from that region, go to Mile High Sports between Doug and James Merilatt and all the people there. And one of these days when I come back, I'll write for you again. Who knows? You never know if that's going to happen.
This was fun. This was really fun. I got to go back and read my Ed Berliner articles. Someone asked me when I was about to do the show, they said, oh yeah, you know Ed? And I was like, yeah. I said, well, what's he like? And I said, well, he's intense. He has opinions. And he has a great vocabulary. It's one thing I remember as your editor, reading some of these things, I felt like I learned new words every single time. So I have not forgotten that in 20 years.
That's what they always say. And then when they turn their head, they go, what a pain in the ass, man. Yeah.
No.
That's what makes us friends regardless. Doug, thanks so much. I want to remind everybody again before we leave, go to Best Damn Sports Talk Period. That is the channel on YouTube. Subscribe, and you will be able to get us there. All the elements, all the features of this show, including Doug and everybody else. We are soon going over to audio podcasts, also on YouTube as well. So you'll be able to download just the audio there without having to go to anybody else, and you can get the entire show and listen to it as well. Doug, always a pleasure, my friend. Stay in touch. We will do this again, I promise, because it's like once you get back in touch with great friends, you have to make sure you always stay in touch with them. So I thank you very much for everything, and thanks for being a friend, and good luck, partner. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Anytime you need me. This was a blast, Ed. Anytime.
You're on, man. For Doug Ottewill, for everybody else here, I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks, everybody. Rock on, true believers. See ya!
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day. You ever tried shawarma? There's a shawarma joint about 2 blocks from here. I don't know what it is, but I want to try it.
We're not finished yet.
And then shawarma after.